Present to you, America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And welcome to the hallowed halls of the University of Logic, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversation. This is Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, on 1170 KFAQ. This is your antidote to popular talk radio. Well, good evening, everyone. And I guess it's morning if you're listening to the morning show, aren't you?
Looks like you've been busy this week.
Oh, I tell you, I unbelievable. Surprising I'm even here.
Well, I bet. Go ahead, Gary.
No, I was going to say it's amazing his hat is in such great shape.
What I was going to say is, it looks like he's been in the hat closet.
Oh, this hat.
Yeah.
There's a story behind this hat.
George W. Bush in 2004? Really? You wore that hat?
Bush, yeah, that's a Bush 2004.
Wow, you're going back a ways there, Joe.
My son, well, one of my three sons, one of my sons, is always, saying, I bet you won't do this, I bet you won't do that, Well, that's, as sons do.
Well,
I mean, he's only 45. He's like a little kid,
Dare, double dare.
Did that, And he bought me this hat 10 years. He bought me this hat 10 years ago, okay? And he says, I bet you wouldn't wear that hat at the studio. I said, I sure would. He said, no, you won't. I said, I would. I said, well, what do you give me if I do it? He says, I'll buy you a Krispy Kreme donut.
He's also a big spender, too.
It sounds like it. My gosh.
Yeah, folks, for you, obviously, who are listening on the radio,
watching on the radio.
You can see me wearing this hat on LibertyTalkRadio.com, because we videotape all of the programs, and then we place it on the LibertyTalkRadio.com website. And you can get it on the app.
And on Facebook, too.
How do you get the app?
Well, they know how to get the app.
They know how to get the app. See, I'm stupid. I don't know how to get it.
You get the app at the App Store, okay?
I can hardly find the bus, But anyway.
My God.
Krispy is great donuts.
You like them?
You walk in and you feel like Schwarzenegger at his prime when you walk in. Well, after you eat a few of those, you walk out, you feel like Homer Simpson.
You might look like Homer Simpson.
Yeah, I tell you, but they're great. They're great. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is not diet
food.
Your
mouth, man.
No, it's not.
But what they do now, I was there last week, and what they do now is they give you a free donut when you walk in right off the conveyor belt, warm.
Ooh, warm.
Yeah, and you have to eat it. Yeah, they have these guys there that if you say no, thank you, they hold your arms, they open your mouth, they shove it down your throat. Now, I'm only kidding. That last part, I'm only kidding. I don't want to get sued. No, really, they're very nice. They give you a complimentary. They give you a complimentary donut.
Do they give you a complimentary George W. Bush 2004 hat too?
No, they would have thrown me out if I
was going to say.
hat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you have to eat the donut with the hat on too? I mean, is that part of the deal?
Yeah, that's part of. No, I tell you, but what's really a sad commentary is that we make fun of this hat, and George Bush, of course, is not going to be noted as one of
the
America's
types.
Greatest presidents. But if you look back from and I don't know how far back you want to go, look at most of the presidents. Even if you read books about LBJ, I mean, people in his own party didn't refer to him as not such a nice guy. They considered him evil.
That's
I mean, you can imagine people in your own party, your support group,
and they were afraid of him.
Yeah, they were afraid of him.
Yeah.
He had dossiers on every. I mean, you can go on and on. I'm not going to spend the time. We don't have much time today. We have Congressman Lankford coming in. Hope he's 7:35. Last time he missed. Hopefully he'll be here this time. I'm not sure if he's afraid of me.
Maybe not after he hears the first half hour, though.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm wearing the George W. Bush hat. He's got to be here.
Okay, yeah.
So, but when you really think about the quality of presidents in the past 30 years, it's abysmal, absolutely abysmal. I mean, you can almost pick anyone. I mean, just an average Joe Blow in the street, minimum education, all of whom would have done a better job because they're not bought and paid for. and then not part of the establishment. And, when we hear the, our military are serving our country, they're not serving our country. They're serving the masters, the masters of the banking system. It's a horrible, it's a horrible situation that we're in. There was an interview that Mark Mobius had on Bloomberg. Now, Mark, I don't know him personally, but I have investments in Mark Mobius's funds. He's a executive funds manager for emerging markets. Now,
like a mutual fund thing?
Yeah. Now, this guy is probably one of the wealthiest guys in the world, I suspect. If you want to interview him, basically you have to be on an airplane because he has his own private plane, and he goes around flying all over the place, over the Middle East.
Let's see if we can interview him.
Far East, rather.
That'd be
Far
fun.
East. Oh, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think
He can fly in
Well, you can't.
in fact, and they can park.
No, in fact, one of the major stations wanted to interview him, and he said, fine. He said, meet me at the airport, and they had to interview him on the airplane while he's flying, going from one factory to another factory, because he personally visits all the factories that he invested in.
Wow.
And he goes and visits the suppliers. It's an amazing guy. He was voted in the top 50 most influential men or persons in 2011. I mean, the guy, anyway, I won't go into it.
Why don't you give the guy's name again, so our
Mark Mobius.
Yeah. So our top listeners
and it's
know
with the Templeton Funds. Now, but here's a talking point. He was asked a question. They said, well, he asked about who he thought was the most influential person, leader in the world. And he hesitated. And he was reluctant to answer the question. And he admitted, he said, I'm concerned about saying this, or something like that. He says, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this. He says, but I will tell you the way I really feel. He said, Vladimir Putin.
I was going to say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he said, I know I'm going to be repercussions because of this. But he said, and they said, well, why did you pick him? He said, because he showed restraint, under the most trying circumstances when our president decided to intimidate. In the face of intimidation, he chose restraint. And he says, I have to give him credit for that. Now, we have a heck of a problem. Now, we can talk about all the minutiae that's going on. But when you think that people, Americans, this guy's an American citizen, I guess, Mark Mobius. When you have someone of that caliber who travels around the world, primarily the Far East, though, that's what he called the Templeton Funds, the emerging market funds, the federal funds, and he's the number one man in the world for that. When he can say that reluctantly and with some trepidation, at the expense of his own president, I mean, that's something. I mean,
when did you say that? What
that
year?
really.
Was that during this?
When you read these things and you see these, you don't know the dates. Okay. But it had to be very recent because
one
it's
of the
after
last
all these
presidents.
Yeah.
Last two.
It's in the past couple of months, probably. Yeah.
A couple of months.
Yeah, this is very, very recent.
You mean he didn't choose Barack Obama as the most influential president?
Well, actually, from what he said, no, but really, when you think about it, from what he said, right, what he was saying is that our president's doing everything wrong.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was a lack of. I mean, he didn't say this, but you can tell there is a lack of respect there for that. If you don't do what I say, we'll impose sanctions. And if we can't do it, we'll get our friends to impose sanctions, and we'll starve you to death.
I'll tell you how bad it is, Joe. I was in the grocery line the other night. I look over to the Inquirer, or whatever that magazine is. Inquirer, I think it is. And there was Obama's face on there, and they had Michelle hollering at him with a big face like that. And then they said, impeach him now. In a little round circle with like a star around it or something.
God.
Can you believe that on that magazine?
Yeah. Well, here, this is how bad things are here in the United States. I have a research group here. Gary's my research guy, And
the other Gary.
Yeah, the other Gary. There's two Garys here. The zombie Gary, the zombie Gary, and the other
zombie Gary, and just the zombie.
Exactly.
Just one of the run-of-the-mill.
The big news of the week. The big news of the week was Eric Cantor lost. He's the second most influential Republican. This is old news. This is old. This is several days ago, right? And but here's the talking point. You know, when someone wins, let's say there's a ball game, two teams, right? And what's the headline the next day? Do you put down the winner's name or the loser's name on the headline?
The winner.
The winner,
exactly.
Right, Milwaukee Braves win series or whatever the case may be. You don't say Milwaukee Braves lose series, right? Well, in all of the headlines, they never mentioned the winner.
Who beat him? Yeah.
They just mentioned the fact that Cantor lost. Buried in paragraph 2 on all of these articles, and I've read several of them, they finally mentioned the fact that David Brett, by the way, was the winner.
Yeah.
But he beat him, the talking point is he beat him handily. The other guy had millions and millions and was spending millions. The other guy could not spend.
It was $5 million.
Well, also,
could not spend $100,000.
All the incumbents were backing him up. Mitch McConnell, several of the others. They were all there trying to make sure he won.
Yeah, and here's the problem. And we're going to go right at the break. I'm going to talk about the problem. Here's the problem: is that everyone's for them, for all these guys are for David Brett. But, I don't think people understand what the policies are, what the problem is. They say they for this, they for that, but then they can't explain it. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into one, and I had a whole program on this last week on the Internet. And it was entitled The Most Misunderstood Public Policy. And guess what you think? Guess what you think? What do you think that is? What's the most misunderstood public policy?
Secure the border?
Exactly, immigration.
Gary, all right.
Yeah,
Sharp as a tack tonight.
And they keep on talking about, Republicans and Democrats and all this and whatever, but we're going to get back to that. We're going to talk a little bit about immigration because I do not understand it. Let's go take a break. The most misunderstood public policy is immigration. And if you don't believe me, ask people what you think one of the most important policy statements are today. And they'll talk about immigration, about securing the borders. In fact, it's gotten so bad that a candidate cannot even hope of winning unless he says, we need to secure our borders.
That's all it takes. Secure our borders. That's a little statement. Yeah.
And the thing is, they know not what they say. Quite frankly, I don't understand it. I do not understand immigration. I don't understand this whole subject. Let's go back. Let's go back in time. Not too many years. Let's go back to, let's say, 400 years ago. And people were coming over here, parking the ship, getting on the land. Did anyone ask them for papers? No. They just stood there. And now, they were okay. The natives were okay with them, provided that they stayed, didn't take anything from them. They didn't subjugate them. And they sort of stayed. They observed them, and then they traded with them. If they were smart, they made friends with them and traded. But they sort of just lived coexisted together.
Yeah, but that's why we have immigration laws today, because we know that we were the crooks that stole it from them. We don't want anybody stealing it.
That's right, yeah.
It worked out too well for the other guys.
You mean you want your car back? I just stole it from you. You're not getting it back. So my question to you is that if our forefathers, the Westerners, came over here from Western Europe, and they just took the land, are they not illegal immigrants? How come they didn't have to show papers? Now, if the natives of this country didn't say, no papers, get on your ship, get the hell out.
Yeah.
No, I want you to really think about this philosophically.
$200.
We came here and we just took the land. Now, it's one of these things. It's like the state of Oregon. You know, people in Oregon don't want anybody in because they want to keep the state the way it is. They don't want it to be overpopulated, right? But everyone wants in because it's a beautiful state. So once people are in, they want to keep everybody else out. You know,
New Zealand. New Zealand is a country that has a very good. You know, I like theirs. You got to have $100,000 in net worth to even talk to them, and then you can fill the papers out. If we did that, we'd be losing population.
The point.
We'd have to send everybody. We'd have to expel everybody.
All right, but let me go further. Let's assume for a second that there is land. Now, at this point, there's no real big central government. There are some cities cropping up, some vague state lines, and there are people living on this land. And they're migrating back and forth, going where they have to go to do what they have to do, not taking anything from anybody, not going on someone's legal land, so to speak, where they have a deed and taking stuff, and they're moving back and forth. Now, there happens to be a northern government and a southern government, and they don't get along very well. And they're fighting like crazy. Now, the people in between have no idea what's going on. This happens all the time, by the way. I'm not making this up. It happens all the time, right? And they say, okay, in order to stop this war, we're going to draw this imaginary line right here, right? Now, when they draw this line, you know, one guy is on one side of the line, and the other guy happens to be standing on the other side. Well, the guy normally from the south normally walks up to the north, does some stuff, and comes back again. Well, now that he does that, he's illegal. Why is he now illegal? What made him illegal? And in fact, what makes a person illegal when they come into the United States? Just the fact that Congress said we'll allow 300,000 in, or whatever the magic number is. Anybody over 300,001, illegal. You're a criminal. You have to obey the law of the land. Well, I just don't understand that. Why not open borders? They say, oh, people will come in and they'll take advantage of the welfare system. Well,
cancel the welfare system.
Well, that's right. Your problem is not. That's right.
That's right.
Your problem is not that they're going to take advantage of the welfare system. The problem is the welfare system. Then they go, yes, but what about the schools? They'll come in, they'll take advantage of the schools. Our taxpayers go to schools, but then we have to supply them with special education because of that's what's English, special education, et cetera, et cetera. I said, wait a minute, that's problem number two. Government schools. There should be no government schools. The people in charge of education should be the parents. Now, if the parents come here and they speak Spanish and they're working in the lettuce fields or whatever, and they want to send their child to school and they have no form, no means of doing so, then they have a problem. They have to figure out how to do that. And most likely that may be a detriment, saying, we would like to go to the United States, but if we go to the United States and pick lettuce, we'll make money, but our children will get no education. We'll stay here. I mean, there's got to be decisions being made based on what's available. Now, if they do come here and they decide all the money they make from working the fields, and by the way, at 108 degrees temperature picking lettuce for 10, 12 hours a day, you and I cannot do that. We can't do that. I tell you, I've read books on guys, young Americans in great physical shape who said they cannot do it. Okay? They do it if they decide to take a certain amount of their money and say, there is a school for immigrant kids, and they charge a minimal amount that'll teach them English, basic math, and, the basics, the ABCs, all right? We'll send them to that school. That's the parent's choice. When the kid comes home, the kid will be with the family, they'll learn. It has nothing to do with the government. We keep on saying, well, what about the schools? What about the welfare programs? What about all these other programs? The problem is not the programs. The problem is that the programs exist by virtue of our government, and it's not immigration. Now, when did immigration literally cease in the United States? Does anyone know the answer to that question? I mean, literally cease.
I hadn't heard it ceased. I haven't heard that it ceased.
Yeah, it did. During the Depression.
Oh.
During the Depression, because it was a natural phenomenon. There was no work. People came here. Now, the problem with the immigration policy of, secure our borders is that you don't keep people out. You keep people in. Now, you can imagine someone risked their lives to come here. They're working. let's face it, we're all the same. We want to go back home. Now, some of us stay away, but for the most part, when you go someplace to work, you want to go back home. That's what your grandparents are. That's what your family lineage is. That's where your language is. You want to go back home. You want to make it so easy to get here because then it's easy to go back. And then you don't have all this. Now, they say, but they come here. They come here and they get into the drug trade. There's a big drug trade in Mexico. And the drug cartels are basically stronger than the government. Well, whose fault is that? Shouldn't we legalize drugs? And then what happens? They're going to peddle aspirin? No, they're not going to do anything like that. No, you see, when you think about it, whenever you think about any problem, the core issue is government involvement. If drugs were legal, drugs would be plentiful. People would not take them any more than they're taking now. They're taking them a lot less. It's been proven. There would be no drug cartel. There would be no crime coming up. And, of course, some people that come up would create crime and get involved in crime, just like any other society, but wouldn't materially change the way we live.
You made me think of another thing, Joe.
What's that?
When you were saying that they stopped immigration during the Depression, we might if the government would tell the truth how bad off the country really is, they probably wouldn't come. We're lying to them. We're lying to everybody.
No, really, it was not. Now, the big problem we have now is that if we have a currency collapse, if we have an economic depression, what will happen is all the illegals here, they'll want to go back to Mexico, but they can't because they'll get arrested.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You see the problem? So all of the Republicans who talk about, well, what on their campaign, secure our borders, I say, fine, how? We have about 9,000, 10,000 miles of borders. How do you do that?
Put a fence around Washington.
Yeah. Well, that would be the best way to do it. I agree.
That would secure our borders.
That's right. Why don't we put a gate around Washington? Okay,
around the
they say
Beltway,
you can go in, but you can never come out.
That would cure a lot of problems right there, Joe.
But you want to secure our borders? Okay. Do you know these people? They talk a good game. Here's the problem. Do you realize that the easternmost tip of Russia is well beyond the westernmost tip of the United States?
Now, do that again. It's
the eastern tip of Russia. In other words, if you look at a map, the most eastern part of Russia towards the United States over the Pacific Ocean, right?
Over the Pacific Ocean.
Is further east than the most western part of the United States. The United States actually goes underneath through the Azores. Goes underneath and is actually further west than Russia is east. So if you want to secure our borders, you'd have to secure each island of the Azores. I mean, when you think about it, then you'd have to arrange to secure the border all around Alaska, which is a country basically at the size of a country, bigger than Germany, I think, itself. Then you have the Pacific and Atlantic, and then you have the Gulf Coast.
And you have Canada. Yeah. My gosh.
Canada is over 3,000 miles alone. I mean, when you think about it, it's insane. Because if someone wanted to get in for some nefarious reason, easy. You can get in one of a million ways. If anything, get a boat from Mexico, in the Gulf of Mexico, drop off on a beach in the middle of the night, let everyone out, leave, no one knows you did it.
And you just have to have a labor card that you're a lettuce picker, and you'll get in.
Right. But it's so unfair. But just to think that they are taking jobs away from us. When you think about this, could you imagine how low we have come down on the intellectual scale? When you have people, we say we are competing against people that generally that come here have a very low level of education, do not speak English, have no particular trade, and want to work in lettuce fields, and you're saying you're taking jobs away from me. If that's who you're competing against, I suggest maybe you go back to school.
Well, they feel at home. Our people don't know how to. They don't have an education. They can't speak the English language. They should just feel right at home here.
Yeah. You see, my point is that once we relegate ourselves to say that we are competing against people who are basically uncompetitive in our marketplace, that says nothing good about the American citizen. Right. Let's take a break. We'll be right back to here for Lankford. My mind is clear. I took off my George W. Bush hat.
Finally.
Yeah, I feel much better. Hey, we have Lee on the line, and we're going to speak to Lee first, and then we'll ask Congressman Lankford to come on the air. Lee, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Okay.
Enjoy your program.
Thank you.
Hey, how long is the Great Wall of China?
I haven't the foggiest. Does anyone have any idea?
Google that.
Someone Google. I don't know.
Research Gary will find that out for you.
Yeah.
Right. Gary, get on that, would you?
It's pretty vast.
Yeah, well, I know it's so large and so long it can be seen from outer space, So it probably is, it wouldn't surprise me if it was 1,000 miles long,
a couple thousand.
Now, how long is our border from all the tip of California, the ocean, all the way across Texas?
Oh, that's actually the Texas border is just short of 2,000 miles.
Okay. So the point is, it can be done. It's just, do you have the will, and how important is it?
Oh, anything can be done. Hold on a second. We got an answer.
Okay. The length is 5,500 miles.
5,500 miles. Yeah.
Wow.
And I just want to point out as a historical fact, the Great Wall of China did not work.
There it is. There it is, Lee. You got your answer.
That's my point. Here's my point.
Sure.
If you don't have a spiritual climate, I'm talking based on Judeo-Christian ethics and the morality, the moral compass of the people, and the leadership that goes along with that, and it does parallel your vote, and over the years, we've seen that erode. I was a public school teacher. If you look at the time at which prayer was taken out of school, from a biblical perspective, you can look at the graph, and the grades have plummeted. And based on historical curriculum. Now, that historical curriculum is what we've actually had in our classroom for all 40 to 60 years.
Okay.
And it's eroded. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if you put a wall up or not. What matters is, what is it that's eroding your nation?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I know. I agree. Lee, we have so many problems, and what you had just mentioned is part of that basket. I have to leave right now because we have Congressman Lankford hanging on the line. I want to thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate it very much. Okay, Congressman, are you there?
I am, actually.
Okay, thank you for joining us here on this insane menagerie of Liberty Talk Radio. Thank you so much for calling in.
Absolutely.
You are the U.S. House of Representatives, District 5. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's central Oklahoma. It's between Bethany and Wewoka, right in the middle of the state.
Right. That's Potawatomi, Oklahoma County, and Sequoia. Am I right?
Yep, Seminole, actually.
Seminole. Okay. Oklahoma. Oh, geez, almost got it. Yeah.
You used to work that area, probably.
Hey, let me tell you something. I'm pretty good, aren't I? Well, tell me, Congressman, now, you became Congressman in 2001, right? So you're serving your second term.
Nope, that's going to go the same way with Sequoia and Seminole, actually. It was actually not 2001, it was 2010, actually, that I was elected, started in 2011.
I'm awfully sorry. I just had my zero in the wrong place. I meant 2010. You're absolutely correct. I stand corrected. Okay, so this is your second term?
This is my second term. Been there 3.5 years, about 42 months.
Okay, and each term is 2 years?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Now, you're a Republican, and you're vying for Coburn's seat. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Now, will you be losing any of your time as a congressman, or is there the transition works out pretty well? I mean, if you won the election.
The way this is happening is Dr. Coburn has announced his early triggers a special election,
he will finish out the year, and I will also finish out the year. So I was elected for the 2-year term here. I'll go all the way through the end of December, and then if elected, then would go in and begin in January of next year.
Okay, all right. So you won't have to abdicate your responsibilities, your seat, or anything like that. You'll be finishing your term, completing your term, and then going into the Senate seat, if you want.
That is correct.
Okay, very good.
That's correct.
Now, why are you doing that? I mean, you got a nice job. You're a congressman. I mean, you're probably a freshman congressman.
Nice job anymore.
So
It's not a nice job anymore.
Why are you bailing ship out of Congress and heading for the Senate?
Well, for me, this starts first and foremost with a sense of God's call in my life. I'm in the Congress because we really feel like this is what God called us to do. And as we prayed and struggled through this, we really feel like God's called us to be able to run for the Senate. There's also some really different constitutional responsibilities between the House and the Senate. The Senate has responsibility dealing with treaties, has responsibility dealing with the judges, has a lot more oversight over cabinet officials. Those are some of the big battlefield areas that we have in the nation right now. So I want to get a chance to get engaged in where the big fight is.
Okay, now, right now, what work did you start that's unfinished that you want to finish before the election, or assuming that you were selected, you were elected? What would you like to finish up and see done before that happens?
That's a great question, because there is a very big project. I have several that I've worked on extensively. One was the export of liquefied natural gas, which is a huge issue for us in Oklahoma, getting a chance to export LNG all around the world. That also puts a huge political pressure onto Russia, which we need to do. I'm almost finished with that. It's taken 2 years to be able to move this administration to be able to push them to allow the export of natural gas all around the world. I'm also working on a bill called the Taxpayers' Right to Know. It's one of the duplication projects that I think will really make a huge difference for us. Dr. Coburn, after 10 years of fighting this through in the Senate, trying to expose duplication, we've yet to take out any duplication in government. And it's one of his great frustrations after 10 years of not getting anything done. I have a bill called the Taxpayers' Right to Know that exposes, on the detail level in each agency, every single agency has to list out exactly what programs they do, how much they cost, how many staff are in them, how many people they serve, how they evaluate that program, and even if they have the legal authority to do it at all. It's a huge way to be able to expose duplication in government, and hopefully we can go after it. I passed that through committee in the House. We've now passed it by the House. Dr. Coburn actually picked it up in the Senate. It's gone through committee and Senate and actually passed the Senate committee, and it's headed to the Senate floor. I would love to see that get signed into law and get that done so we can get to work on it.
That would be, now, is that House Bill 1423 that you're talking about?
You know what? I have to go back and pull. It's called the Taxpayers' Right to Know. I have to go back and check the number. I'm tracking about 5,000 some odd bills right now in the House of Representatives.
Only 5,000?
Wow.
Okay. That's the Taxpayers' Right to Know. Is that the one you're referring to?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, that's 14. By the way, you can write this down. This is 1423. Okay. And I'll send you a bill for that one, okay? Okay. Now tell me, what, from your perspective, all right, what was from your feelings, your evaluation of things? Where was your biggest failure? No, come on, we all have failures. You know, let me be honest with you. I made a mistake back in 1953. Okay, it was a small one. I corrected it immediately, but even I made a mistake. You know, where do you think you went astray, and what would you change, or what do you think? What do you regret? I guess what's your regret of the
wow, you're talking about in Congress or just in life in general?
Oh no, forget about life. No, I'm talking about Congress. No, this is a family program. No, just Congress. I'm only kidding. Just Congress.
Oh, gosh, I tell you, the big fight that happens so often is getting a chance to get up to speed. When you're in your very first year in Congress, trying to learn all the facts and the figures, get up to speed on the research, I'd have to go back and look at some of the bills and issues that are there that would be regrets for me. But quite frankly, I kind of run life pretty much wide open to be able to say, okay, well, how much work can I get done in a day? And then to try to get all that done and try to do the research. I can tell you I have regrets at the end of a day to think I've got stuff that I really want to get done that I did not get done, and that's pretty frustrating for me. But I have to go back. I'm sure there are several of the earliest bills that when you get through any set of votes, when you're first learning how to do this and how to be able to do the research, I'd turn around and look back at.
Now, when a bill is proposed, they're usually they could be dozens or maybe even hundreds of pages long, and usually they're written in such a manner that even McGill Gorilla couldn't understand them. I mean, let's face it, I try to read them myself. It's the heretofore to the first part on Section 32.
Oh, yeah.
Shall not, even if you take one sentence and try to understand what they're saying, you can't do it. How do you read a bill? When it's like that, how do you decide what you're going to vote on and whether or not what it says, what you think it says, and what you're voting on is one and the same?
That's a great question, because let me tell you why. I have folks all the time say, did you read the bill? And I'll say, yes, let me tell you what that bill said. It said on PL 27-13R, replace but with and comma. That's what it is. It's a giant thing in government. But
you want this job?
It's taking some old law, and it's taking out an and it's inserting this certain change in it, and then you've got to go back to the old law and be able to pull it. Now, usually most bills are 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. That's the majority of bills are fairly short. You get into some of the complicated bills, they may be 25, 30 pages, and really big bills, maybe 150 or so. That's why Obamacare was such a huge deal at 2,800 pages. Absolutely no way to be able to read through and to be able to process that. Now, they'll also create a report language that's actually in real language that you can actually read that tells you what that replace and comma with but means. And so you have to go through all the report language as well. So when folks tell you they read the bill, also make sure they read the report language.
Yeah, well, doesn't someone give you a synopsis or a summary saying Aldous Gobbledygook really says this, and in 15 words or less says, whatever it is, we're going to increase taxes by 0.25% or whatever the case may be.
Language, I go through the legislative language. For me, it's a big deal to be able to read through this stuff. We'll also get little short executive summaries. Some of them we'll go through that we've already dealt with a year ago, and we know, okay, this is the same bill that came up. Now the Senate rejected it, so we've altered language in this couple of sentences. Now we're bringing it up again. So sometimes you're not reading back through the whole thing all over again because it's basically the same thing you've done before. So you take each bill a little bit different, but it's important you actually do the research. Typically for me, when I'm in Washington, D.C., my staff leaves about 7:30 or so. That gives me from about 7:30 to midnight or so to be able to read through all the things that I'm going through the next day and try to get up to speed on it.
Okay. Now, do you get to read the earmarks, or are they just sort of thrown in after the fact?
Oh, no, that's the big fight. We actually killed earmarks. When my freshman class came in 2010, one of the big projects we had right at the very beginning is how do we kill earmarks so that those are not there. And in January 2011, my class actually did vote to take earmarks out of the House rules. Then the Senate actually followed suit on that. So we removed earmarks. Now, there is a big fight trying to get in each piece of language because you get into a big bill, and when it is in the final drafting phase, you've got to be able to have staff to be able to go through it because, yes, sir, there are things that do get thrown at the last minute, so you got to check it and evaluate it. We want as many eyes on that as possible when we get to the end of the bill to make sure everyone's looking at it for stuff they would sneak in at the end.
All right. If there was an election today, I guess your main competitor is T.W. Shannon, right?
That's correct.
And also there's Randy Brogdon, right?
That's right. Now,
and then there's 4 other, I guess, minor candidates. I hate to use that term because that's derogatory in a way, but I mean, but they're of lesser electoral status, I guess. Who would win today if there was an election?
Well, of course, I'm going to say me on that. By the way, I'm going to.
No, you're right. No, listen. I looked at your. Let me be honest with you. If I looked at your website,
at all.
What's that?
I mean, we talk about those lesser-known candidates. I don't denigrate any candidate because if you go back to 4 years ago, that was me. I'd never been in politics at all. Had
right.
Never
okay.
Run a
I agree with you. That's why I say that with apologies. Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
No, every single candidate, I look at it and say they are just as viable as I am because I actually did the work, engaged with people. People stepped up and voted. But I had no political background at all, and lots of folks in the political class just pat me on the head and said, "That's nice, but we're going to let you."
Nice guy,
a nice boy.
Hey, well, who's the front runner right now? I mean, according to the polls, because I haven't watched the polls all of this.
Yeah, not saying flippantly, I really am. Yeah, the latest poll that came out of the field was last Wednesday night. It was a poll that was done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'm ahead by 7 percentage points statewide.
Okay, well, I'll be honest with you. I went to your website. I would not vote for you. I'd vote for your wife. You can tell her that, okay? You can say, Joe Cristiano on Liberty Talk Radio said that on air, you know? And we cover the whole southern part of the United States, so she'll become famous now. She'll probably run for office after this, right? She'll probably win.
Let me just say, we have a running joke in our family we talk about, because we have known each other since high school. And I know the type of guys that she dated in high school. They were big, thick-necked guys I nicknamed Gunter. I won the Cindy Prize.
Okay, now, let me ask you, this is going to be a tough one. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Okay, you're not going to hang up on me?
No, sir.
You promise, okay. All right. Do you believe in the Constitution and the separation of church and state?
I do, actually.
Okay, good. All right, that's all I want to know. Well, because you're a religious guy, and most religious guy people are not.
Most of what people are not?
I said a lot of religious people are not. They're not really in favor of a separation of church and state. I mean, they want God they want their version of God, or whatever that may be. They want that imposed in our Constitution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just wondering, because you're such a religious guy. In fact, you're the only guy that I know of that has a on your website. Don't you have a place where you can request a prayer? Can't you?
Sure.
Prayer
yeah,
request.
I've got that on there as well. We've got a lot of people of faith that are engaged across our state. Let me tell you what's interesting. I have a lot of folks that will catch me and say, hey, you come from a faith background. I directed the nation's largest Christian camp, a camp called Falls Creek. We have 51,000 guests a summer. So I come from very much a faith background for me personally, as well, I guess, in the past occupationally as well. But what's interesting, a lot of people lose track of, Article 6 of the Constitution says there is no religious test for any officer of the United States.
Right.
Any person elected anywhere in the United States, mayor, city councilman, president, Congress, Senate, whatever it may be, there's no religious test. You don't have to have a faith, nor do you have to take a faith off that you already have. Faith is irrelevant in America. Those that have faith should practice it and have the absolute freedom to practice it, whatever faith that may be. Those that don't have faith are not compelled to take that up. To be able to be a loyal American.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I want you to know I'm an atheist doing God's work. That's the way I describe myself. No, I get out. Let me tell you something, Jim. I get out of more arguments that way. You know, people say, "Are you Lutheran or are you?" You know, I'm an atheist doing God's work, and that confuses the heck out of them. Ends the conversation, and we finish our coffee, and no one walks out with a black eye. You know. All right. Now let me ask you. Now you voted. From what I understand, you voted for an extension of the Patriot Act. Why did you do that?
Well, let me tell you the why on that. We have multiple limitations that are put in on it, and there are several key elements we got to watch for. The Patriot Act, in its essence, deals with foreign terrorism and deals with people outside the country trying to be able to take us in, and I have no problem spying on people outside this country. I have a big problem with our own government spying on Americans. We have protection constitutionally, what the Constitution says in our houses, in our papers, in our persons, in our effects. The American government cannot watch other citizens, but we absolutely should watch what people outside of our country that mean to do us harm are doing. You look at the latest vote that we just took up on a whole giant revision of the Patriot Act, that put a lot of additional protections for the American citizen, like putting a citizen advocate in every one of these secret FISA courts, so that there's someone speaking out for our civil rights rather than just a court making a decision without some citizen advocate in it. And it limited what they can actually gather as far as business records. This famous library card business records piece of the Patriot Act, we know this administration has abused. So we've got to be able to knock that down. But
doesn't the Patriot Act also... aren't there some provisions in there? I mean, the language is probably squirrely, but it in fact infringes upon the Constitution itself. And I haven't read the whole thing. Let me be honest with you. I'm not an expert in it. But I hear people screaming all the time about how the Patriot Act actually violates the rights of the individual and really has stripped us of our rights as citizens.
No, see, I would disagree on that. There are areas that the administration has gone farther than they should have gone, and quite frankly, it was one of these secret FISA courts that gave them authority to do that. When we discovered that, we put statutory limits back on that to make sure that they cannot do it. The Patriot Act, though, is written to be able to track what's happening overseas. If somebody overseas means to do us harm, I think we should be aware of that. We have a responsibility to be able to protect this nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when we've got a foreign terrorist coming after us, I do want to listen in on his phone call. I do want to know what he's going to do, and I want to make sure that threat's not coming to our front door.
Oh yeah, I'm sure every country feels the same way. What about what about things like the NSA? You know, with that building in Utah where they're they're data gathering and what do they call that?
The Snowden
the Snowden
situation.
I mean that's Snowden so much. That's a separate issue. Snowden is a separate. I'm just saying. What about the NSA? Why don't we get rid of those people?
Well, the NSA's responsibility is to protect us, our national security interests, from people outside of the country. Where we had the biggest problem was when the NSA is discovered. The NSA is actually tracking not the phone call content, but the actual phone calls that Americans are making. I can vouch for my mom. She is not a terrorist, and there's no reason for the NSA to be able to track my mom's phone calls.
Well, I mean, but they're doing that. They're tracking everyone, everything that I say. They can eventually call up and use it against me somehow if they miss. They can.
This is a call-in program. You would want them to call in, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah. No, but I'm just saying that every telephone call is being captured now.
What they used to do on this is not the actual contents of the calls. That's not true. This is something that we really pushed really hard to be able to find out because there was a lot of rumors out there that they were actually tracking the content of calls, and they were not doing that. They were actually keeping a master list of every phone call that you have made over the last several years, who you made them to, storing it in a database. And the purpose of that, I get the purpose of it, and they try to explain it to us, and I can nod my head and go, I get the purpose. You just can't do that constitutionally. The purpose of it was when they take down some terrorist in Afghanistan and they pick up the cell phone off of this terrorist, and they look at it, and it's called an American number. Okay, the first question is, why is this thug in Afghanistan called an American number? So they would contact in through their intelligence channels and say, this is the cell phone we just picked up. Here are the numbers they just called. They would immediately pull the database and find out what those calls went to and who those folks actually called. What they would say is a two-jump process. What they're looking for is there a terror network in the United States that we were not aware of, that this guy in Afghanistan that is a known terrorist thug is actually contacting them and working with them. Now, there are 20 different terror attacks that have been thwarted by using that technology in that database. So that's good. I'm glad they're thwarting terrorism, but that's bad. You can't just gather a list of every single phone call made in America and hold on to it just in case you need it. You've got to have a court order to do that.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I trust the government as much as I can throw this entire studio off my back. You know, I trust them not. And right. I think it's just getting worse. We're becoming a police state, Jim. You know that. It's this slow creep that bothers me. You know, policemen don't look like policemen anymore. They look like stormtroopers. You know, guy stops you. You know, if you go through a stop sign and you think you just went through the Berlin Wall. You know, I mean, it's just getting out of hand, and I don't know when it's going to stop. It doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Well, it better get better because we're going to turn some of this around. One of the things I'm working on is all these federal agencies that are getting their own, basically, assault team. So what in the world does the EPA need with an assault team? What does the Department of Agriculture need with an assault team?
Absolutely. Right.
If there's a problem, and there really is a huge issue that's happening somewhere, we have the U.S. Marshals and the FBI to be able to take care of that. The Department of Ag does not need its own attack vehicle and tactical gear. So we're trying to take out one of those after another, identifying all the different agencies that have it, and then get rid of it. There's no reason to have that.
Okay, Jim, we have 2 minutes left. I'm going to make a comment. I want you to comment on the comment, and that is, in order to make illegals legal that come here, all we have to do is increase the number of visas for Mexicans that come here who want to do work that we don't do. Why don't we just change it from like 300,000 to 500,000? We solve the immigration issue and knock that wall down. They look disgusting.
Well, here's the big issue on that. We have 1 million legal folks a year that we take through our immigration process. We are the most open country in the world to legal immigration, but our visa process is pathetic.
Okay.
It's expensive, it's long, it's burdensome. There's been a lot of union rules that have been added to it that they'll say if there's someone going to come, here's all these different union regulations that are attached to it. And so what's happened is it's easier just to be illegal than it is actually to go through the legal process. So part of it's not the number, part of it is the complication of the process.
Okay.
I don't have a problem if someone wants to work in the United States, if there's a job that's been promoted, advertised to an American, and that American did not take it, that someone internationally wants to be able to take for a season.
Agreed.
I don't have a problem with that, but we got to actually work at the process to make sure that we can actually do it, that they do the job, and then they go home.
All right, Jim, thank you very much. We got about 30 seconds. I want to give that 30 seconds to you so you can tell our listeners about your program and your campaign, or how you can be reached.
Yeah, best way to be able to get a hold of us is just JamesLankford.com. It's with a K, Lankford with a K. JamesLankford.com. You can go to the website, find out my stance on a bunch of different policy issues there, how they can get involved in the campaign, if they want to donate or if they want to volunteer. They want to just be able to get out there and vote. Our election is actually June the 24th, so it's just 10 days away.
That's right, it is.
If they're on Facebook, they can jump out there on Facebook just on James Lankford.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much for being on Liberty Talk Radio, and good luck to you.
Hey, thanks, guys, very much.
You take care. Bye-bye now. Okay, I guess this is the end of tonight's program. This is the end of today's program. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. With that, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ. Stay well. Stay tuned.